Hi everybody, this is Age of Agility and I'm Nick LaFleur, producer of the show. This week we're joined by Mark Hardie, a professional whose career embodies the definition of agility. Mark is a serial entrepreneur who has participated in startups in a wide variety of roles over the years. He now teaches and advises entrepreneurs and young startups just outside of Boston at Framingham State University's Entrepreneurship Innovation Center. We talk about all things innovation and agility and tech in this one, whether you're thinking about building more agility into your career goals, changing careers, or even trying to scale your startup's tech stack. Mark has fantastic advice for you in this conversation. Something that did stick out to me, and I want you to listen to, is a comment about scaling processes over people. The exact quote, I think, is you can't scale people. It made me wonder, what are some of the things that you're doing, either personally or with your team, to help automate and manage those tedious process-oriented tasks? Leave us a comment wherever you're hearing this, or DM us at Quickbase on social media with your tips and advice. In the meantime, take a listen and enjoy our conversation with Mark Hardie.
Welcome to the Age of Agility. This is a show where we talk to people who are facing unique challenges with an agility mindset. We'll learn from industry leaders, business and IT professionals, and even check in on our colleagues from time to time. Stay tuned as we explore the age of agility.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Age of Agility podcast. My name is Shannon Curran, and I am your host. And I am here today with a person that has built his career on entrepreneurship and innovation, serial entrepreneur, and no stranger to agility. He started in startups and invested in entrepreneurial ventures, as well as coaching and teaching entrepreneurship at MIT Sloan and Harvard Business School. And now he is working at Framingham State University as the Innovation Center Director. And today we're here with Mark Hardie. Thanks so much for joining us.
Hey, thank you for having me. Appreciate that warm and comfortable introduction.
So, love to hear a little bit about who you are and what you do and how that relates to sort of the topic of this podcast, to agility.
Right off the bat, I think when you listen to my career background, I often call it nimble, but agile is another good word. Is that ability to really move quickly with technology that evolves very fast. Into different roles. I've done a variety of things in my career, both at big companies as well as relatively small or startup companies. So for me, agility from a career standpoint is the recognition that because tech is going to move as fast as it is, you have to be a very agile professional. You have to recognize how important it is to update your training, how important it is to recognize that you're not going after roles necessarily and climbing role by role, up, but you're really looking at where in an organization the need exists that you can address with your skill set. And you're always increasing, upping, adding to your skill set. So that gives you a great deal of flexibility, both internally as well as perhaps other companies you're looking at, and maybe even other industries. Maybe you want to jump from the education sector, the ed tech world, over to health tech or food tech now, and you want to bring your skills with you. That's agility, the ability to leave one industry and go to another, pick up maybe a new analytical skill or a new development skill, and then go over and do something fun in the food tech world. So I just appreciate the fact that we're talking about it from an agile standpoint.
Yeah, absolutely. So in your current role, you do a lot of mentoring and coaching, right, to folks at the collegiate level. So would love to hear a little bit about how you talk about building agility into your personal career, like you just mentioned, but also you're talking with a lot of entrepreneurs. So how do you really build that into the coaching and the mentoring that you do?
I deal with both student entrepreneurs, students here at Framingham State, but we're also a co-working space. So we have quite a few companies here that are raw startup companies that come to me as director and ask for guidance, help, advisory, et cetera. And so for those companies that are here in the co-working space, they need resources, be that interns, but they also are faced with a variety of challenges as companies and come and ask for help. So my work with them is really around how do they, as entrepreneurs with this new business that they're starting, figure out some of the challenges that they face and find solutions for those. And some of that is it's short term. You might need something in the short term and then be able to switch and do something else in the longer term. You might use an existing online property like Slack for messaging amongst your team or group or other entrepreneurs, but then you might build something or develop something specific for your company and its internal employees. And so I'd sit with them and work with them around just how they might do that.
That's awesome. So so we talk a lot about the term operational agility on this show, thinking about, we have our own definition, right, with the work that we do with companies, but would love to hear a little bit about what that means to you and how you're coaching entrepreneurs and startups to build operationally agile organizations that can withstand change.
Well, the nature of young companies and startup companies is that they grow and add more people, go from 5 or 6 to 50 to 60 to 500 to 600. And through those stages, you need different tools. You need to use the right tool at the right time. And so while I might have a relatively straightforward platform that I'm using, or a SaaS platform that serves me well as a young company, once I get up into the 50 or 60 people, I might not be able to use that platform anymore because of privacy concerns, because it's not tailored to what I need. And now I have to figure out, okay, how do I get something tailored? Development is costly, quite frankly. Development is very costly. So you can't always build a bespoke solution. And so you look to market for simple ways in which to build the necessary capabilities online. So I'm an old database programmer. I mean, once upon a time, I wrote code and developed in what we had called, 2GLs and 3GLs and 4th generation languages. Today, what a young company is going to need is an ability to take some of what they have as data and quickly create a tool to manage that data, to produce reports, to produce results, to use that data specifically for business transactions. And while they might find something simple online or use Excel, quite frankly, to start with, they're going to need to move to something more transaction oriented, meaning it's automated. Okay. Excel is not, unless you're a real whiz. But you'd want to really move to something else. And so database technologies are often the solution to that. You hear people talk about structured query languages, SQL, and tools online that allow you to do those structured queries. Agility is the ability as you grow as a company to move through different technologies, satisfy the needs you have at the time. Because by the time you get to the hundreds of people and you've got customers all over the country, all over the world, and those accounts need to be managed. You need some sort of customer management or customer relationship management tool. The biggest of the big ones might not be what you need. The Salesforce.coms might not be what you need when you're still only 5 or 6 people, but you got to figure out something that's better than Excel. So you figure out what that window, that interim period is. And I spend, quite frankly, a bit of time with the companies here at the center and often my students. How do you move through those transitions? What's it going to take from you? How do you make those decisions? Where do you go for the tools and the technologies to do that?
Absolutely. Yeah. You hit on so many important things there. I think the big thing is really finding technology that works the way that your people do and really gets to where you want to be, not necessarily where you are, right? Like, I'm sure you do a lot of coaching on, okay, there's probably a difference in what you think you need today but what is it going to take to scale to what you want to be?
So scale is the key word.
Yes.
And it happens quickly. And when you get it right, you literally outgrow your solution. So it's a testament to doing the right things that you're literally outgrowing your solution. You're scaling. And what doesn't scale are individuals, people, and the knowledge that they have. What scales is process. And so you've got to create process, and process is creating using technologies like, database or transaction or analytical tools that it's repeatable. Process that's repeatable can scale, okay? Humans that do something really well all day long can't scale because you just can't keep adding more people. you've got to figure out process, and that process has to be automated and repeatable, and increasingly easier and easier and easier to use, right? So a complicated process needs to become a relatively easy process so that you can bring someone in to do that, and bring more people in to do that easier process, and that's how you scale.
Yeah, absolutely. So in talking to all of the startups, young companies that you work with as they continue to grow, I'm sure you end up talking to them as they get bigger too. What are the most common mistakes you see organizations making through this transition as they try and scale, as they take a look at their tech stacks and see like what tools are there, like, do we really need to support us? And maybe it's more than technology, right? Like as they take a look at the culture of their business, like what are the common mistakes that you see with folks at that stage?
Probably the most common one I see is they stay too long on a technology. It's satisfying to a degree the need, and so they stick with it. I'll give you a good example. I did some work with a company that was in the 800 number business, okay? And their customers licensed 800 numbers from them, and the company provided reports to those customers on a regular basis about how well their use of the 800 number was, how many calls and call center detail, etc. They were sending them reports in Excel once a month. And the reason I came in was, how do we switch from this old way of sending companies 800 Excel reports to a more software as a service model, a SaaS model, something online that the customer can just go in and see their data and have some stock reports created for them. What were their key performance indicators or KPIs, and could they get those pre-built into the platform? So the work I did with them, the advice that I gave to them was, one, you need to get off of that Excel, because all you're doing is sending somebody a problem. That's all you're doing. They get that report once a month. They're probably a director level individual who just hates it because they've got to turn an Excel spreadsheet into graphics and information that their leadership team can make decisions on. And I said, the smart thing for you to do now is to switch over to some software as a service model. Build something that you could create a dashboard, an admin panel for your customers where they would log in, see their data, click a button, and the monthly reports would show up in charts and graphs, etc. And if they needed to dig down deeper, they could do some other investigation on their data. But sending out an Excel spreadsheet, they take too long on the same thing because it kind of works. And honestly, customers won't complain. They'll just go to another business. Mm-hmm. Another thing that I see often is just what we were just talking about a minute ago. People don't scale, process scales. So the sooner you get process in place and showcase how repeatable it is and how easy it is to do, the quicker you'll get to, we call it that hockey stick, that ability to scale up. The longer you wait on that, the more people you throw at the problem, the more difficult it gets. And so often you see that in companies that aren't very technical. They don't readily think about a technical solution. They think manpower, woman power, people power, as the solution to a lot of work that needs to be done. We need to build a solution using software tools to tackle that, not add more people.
Right. I think so. The two big things that sort of come out to me there is in the first conversation in the first mistake that you see is that it really is operations failing their customer experience, right? Like you hear all of this conversation around customer experience, make sure your customers are happy. But in their case, in the case of providing something in Excel and not understanding what their customers need, it's their internal operations that is actually providing a disservice to their end user customer experience.
Often that's friction between your IT department that built something that they like and your marketing or your sales or the revenue side of the house saying, hey, we need something newer, bigger, faster, better, more in tune with what our customers are asking for. And then that friction exists because your IT department or your technical side of the company, usually in operations, is going to struggle to figure out how to fit that new thing in with all the old stuff that they're doing. So they get entrenched. So they're anything but agile.
Right.
They're lumbering along and not having that ability to really move quickly or shift, quite frankly. The ops side of the house is stuck. The revenue side of the house is pushing for change, for new, for different, for better service to customers. That's their job, quite frankly, is to read the customer, know the customer, and that friction exists. And so a lot of what we're talking about thematically is really how does the company maintain some level of agility such that both sides, revenue, expense, or ops side and biz dev side, don't fight over priorities, but recognize, hey, it's time to make a move. We all agree, good. How are we going to make this move? Doesn't have to be big, it doesn't have to be expensive, but we definitely got to move, right? Yes, everybody agrees. And then you figure out what sort of small steps you can take. One of the nice things about a lot of tools that are available now is that, quite frankly, the revenue side of the house can do for themselves. And so your IT side of the house, it says, we guard the data, the databases, we guard the transaction integrity, etc. But we will send you some of that, as long as you promise not to let it out of your hand and let you, quote unquote, play with it. And often playing with information or playing with data on that side of the house, the revenue side of the house, is fantastic. That's literally what they need. They need an ability to get beyond just back of the house produced reports to, hey, we need some flexibility to sort of do quick analytics in shorter time frames, to be better at describing what our long-term needs are with sort of short-term pilot types of activities.
The fact is, throwing more people at something is not always the best sort of solution. It's almost never the best solution to scale. And a lot of the time, it's not the best solution to even solve the problem in front of you, right? Because typically, you probably already have unlocked potential within your people. You're not arming them with the correct tools to be able to do their jobs. So like you were just saying, that having IT be able to enable the revenue side of the business to be able to gain insights, have access to data, be able to provide customers with sort of that secret sauce that is whatever their business really provides, is something that I know we see in our business a lot as a value add. And that's the way that companies are, really skyrocketing, is unlocking the potential of the people they already have. And then, of course, creating more jobs, doing all of those things. But a lot of the time, it's just because you're going to get more people that are just as frustrated as the ones you currently have. So that's not going to really help.
Well, and what we've seen over a lengthy period of time. So over the span of my career, from the early days of PCs, and I was a specialist and wrote code, and people hired me in, to web-based tools and technologies, things I can do on my device, literally in my phone, inherent in the ability of the people that you hired. So you're right. You unlock potential on the revenue, on the sales side, on the customer account management side, to use the tools that they need. Their familiarity with the web browsers, doing searches, being able to survey, using a tool online that does surveys. Okay, I know how that works. Now can I create something that I can do myself? So you see simple stuff like a doodle poll, easy things that now once upon a time, for the IT department, that was their end user. Well, that end user can do a lot for themselves because they're a part of a work class or a generation of employees who are far enough along in their inherent knowledge of how to use technology. You're not just using a typewriter anymore. You're not just at a keyboard anymore on a PC. Now you're on a connected device with a whole host of different tools available to you. Which ones do you pick from? Which one's going to get you the best, short-term result before you build something even more significant? You made a good point, quite frankly. It's costly to bring in development talent. They're expensive to do little things. You really only want them to come in and do really big things, complete overhauls of systems or conversions from one thing to another. But you don't want to bring them in to do relatively simple interfaces to a data set that's produced on a periodic basis, that the individual who needs that data set wants to do some specialty queries or wants to better understand it. That's a relatively simple thing that's best handled on the what we would call the client side, the end user side. And I think PCs sort of ushered that in. If you were in the game like I was back in the mainframe days, that was all done by the Management Information Systems Department. Increasingly, it's done on the client side or the user side on their own laptop with the tools that they have at their disposal. And a leadership, a manager, a director, a VP will say, hey, let's create a way in which we can evaluate our, tier one customers to better serve them, or maybe bundle a new product into our current product suite. Let's do a quick test. Let's do some analysis. We don't need to call IT for that.
Absolutely. And what you were saying there too is that a lot of the time, these sort of quicker turn, we call them rapid cycle innovation. There's like these quick turn processes are often changing, just to go back to our conversation around agility, as your market changes, as your customers change, as the world changes, right? So it's one of those, the last thing you want is to be sitting in a queue and then have to go back to the queue and say, now my requirements have changed because the world is different than what we originally thought we needed.
And queue is literally how IT operates. You are in a queue of projects, prioritized, and you don't jump up, for any particular reason. You usually just sit there, and it gets frustrating because there are lots of other priorities, and your little data analysis tool is just not going to rise to the level of importance as perhaps some of the other things that IT is working on typically. So you have to do for yourself.
Absolutely. So, all right. So with all of within your career, and as you work with so many innovative companies every day, what do you think enterprises, like large scale enterprises, can learn from the folks that you work with every day about how to do business, how to run their businesses?
Well, the folks I work with, and I don't say this as a cliche, they're scrappy because they have to survive. It literally, if they're not scrappy, if they're not hustling, if they're not trying and failing and standing up and trying again, they just fail and go away. So I think one of the things enterprises can learn from what you see with entrepreneurs is just this attitude toward, hey, we really should try this. We really should pilot this or do something on a small scale to test some of our theories and our thinking, because quite frankly, there's very little damage you can do. You'll learn something as well. Honestly, you kind of need to develop the skill anyway. You really need to recognize that as the pace of technology moves along, think about it. Think about all the different social media properties that exist now that weren't here 5 years ago, that were nowhere 10 years ago, and we didn't even have a term called social media 15 plus years ago, right? So now you as a professional, your greater concern in all likelihood with your customers is some of what social media is showcasing, showing, exposing them to, and how do you integrate that into the product or the service that you offer? Well, there are ways in which to not only analyze using the data that comes from that social media or using the platform itself, but also simply literally importing or exporting data into a tool that you would use to then analyze that data. Enterprises can learn a lot from startup companies, which is why they hire entrepreneurs, because they do want people that are a bit self-directed, take the initiative, try things, aren't willing to sort of scrape their knee doing something and then dust themselves off and, say, okay, I learned how not to do it. Now let me try it again and get it right. You're probably going to make a couple of mistakes being a little bit scrappy in the enterprise, but you're not going to do anything that is cataclysmic. You're likely just going to learn a lot and then put yourself in a position to actually deliver better on the role that you play in the company, serving customers, creating product, etc.
Awesome. Well, our last question of this podcast is always one about you. So we'd love to know, how are you doing? How have things been for you? I'm sure a wild year working in an industry that was massively disrupted, just as a lot of us were, but higher education is one that absolutely has been massively disrupted. So would love to hear how you are doing personally.
The pandemic has sort of sent people home, and it got them extra hours in the day that they didn't used to have. They lost those hours to commuting, to moving around. Now they get all those hours back. And so I do a lot of coaching and mentoring. And so I'm spending even more time. My day is pretty full. I'll give you a great example of arguably agility in the pandemic world. We're all on Zoom all the time. And guess what Zoom creates? It creates a chat room full of chat stream text. How do you get that text and analyze? So I can get a TXT, a text file, but do I know how to take that and move it from reading it painstakingly? Can you read 400 pages or 100 pages of Zoom text with a lot of really great insights in it? I've got to figure out a way to get that information into some other tool that then I can analyze it, do searches, etc. So the thing for me that has been really eye-opening, quite frankly, is not only am I doing well and I'm super busy, but I have this challenge with text streams in the chat stream, the text in the chat stream that I've got to figure out how to do something with. And if anything, that's an example of, hey, I've got to be prepared to deal with something new that I've not dealt with before. And honestly, my university is not gonna do a project for me just to get that information in a form that I can use. So yeah, I'm doing great. Thank you for asking.
Absolutely. Well, Mark, it has been a pleasure to have you with us today. Is there anything that you'd like our audience to know about work that you have coming up, or the work at the center, or anything, anywhere they can follow you, anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm on all the social media sites. I'm easy to find, and I try as best as I can to showcase some of the things I'm interested in. I think one of the top of mind things for me is this movement more toward experiential learning, which both undergrads and graduate students are pushing to get better experiences with young companies. And so I'm watching to see how that sort of unfolds. And also what I think is going to be co-working 2.0. A different take on it, kind of. We're doing it out in the suburbs. I think that's probably going to be a lot more a reality than urban. So yeah, lots of fun stuff going on, and I'm excited. So
awesome. Well, thank you everyone for tuning in today, and make sure to like and subscribe. You can find us anywhere that you listen to your favorite podcasts, as well as quickbase.com/podcast, and our YouTube channel, youtube.com/quickbase. I'm pretty sure that's what it is. And I hope you all have a wonderful day, and we will see you next time.